Welcome to the broadcast, my dears. I have received some criticism from a viewer regarding my coverage of the Sussexes in Nigeria, and I will be addressing it a little further on in the broadcast after some royal niceties. And I do warn you that I will be providing a robust defence of my commentary while remaining open-minded and able to receive this criticism because it was presented politely and with courtesy. So with that in mind, I will ask those of you who might leap to my defence, which I appreciate by the way, I would advise you to keep comments in response to this person polite and respectful. And there's no need to be spiteful about it because this viewer was not spiteful about it. And we can all be civilised here, can't we? And tolerate different opinions on things. And it's important not just to provide an echo chamber for those of us who might concur on certain issues. So we will have that after the royal niceties of the day. Because the Queen was at Charleston Festival today, and it was a really gorgeous event, because it was a surprise appearance. This was in Firle, in Sussex. Yes, the county of Sussex.
I'm sorry about the weather. I lived in Sussex for many years, and it was always sunny, so I don't know what's happened today.
A surprise appearance at the Power of Reading, an event to celebrate the magic of children's literature.
It's very, very nice to be here again.
And the Queen was toting a see-through brolly, which is one of my favourite things. I love those umbrellas. They always have filled me with cheer throughout my entire life. I just love. It was probably the late Queen Liz that actually introduced me to the vision of them, because she used to carry them about, didn't she? And I just think they're wonderful. I always wanted one. And Queen Camilla looked lovely with hers. And this event featured the Children's Laureate, Joseph Coelho, and there were celebrities dotted around: Sir Lenny Henry, Jacqueline Wilson, Jenny Agutter, and the school children and parents were shocked to find themselves in the company of the Queen, who gave a speech telling children that she would have loved to have gone to Hogwarts.
One place I think I'd love to go to is Hogwarts. I think...
And one can understand why, because Hogwarts of J.K. Rowling's imagination was so full of magic and mischief and wonder and beauty and adventure.
I'd like to jump on the express, and I'd like to go to Hogwarts and sit in that wonderful hall and wait for the hat to come round and pick a house for me.
And I'm lucky enough to say that I experienced a few of my academic years in a very similar sort of building. Gothic style, but it was a very similar sort of atmosphere that you would imagine is at Hogwarts, with cavernous ceilings and, as I say, that sort of Gothic style of architecture. And I feel incredibly lucky to have been there for a few years. And Charleston was the modernist home and studio of Duncan Grant and Vanessa Bell, who was the sister of Virginia Woolf. And during the 20th century, it was a gathering point for the period's most radical artists and writers and thinkers, who were known collectively as the Bloomsbury Group. And a little bit later on in the day, the Queen found herself in Rye, where the church bells of St Mary's rang to welcome Her Majesty, and she met with representatives from the local community. And as patron of the Royal Voluntary Service, she was introduced to 93-year-old Inga Davey, who was wearing a medal for her long service of 45 years as a volunteer. The Queen met with bell ringers and visited the National Trust property that was once the home of the novelist Henry James. A question from Norma Southwood, who asked, "River, do you have a close-up of Queen Camilla's brooch at the garden party on Wednesday? It looks to me that she's wearing the Williamson pink diamond flower brooch of our late Queen. I can't find a good enough photo to identify it, and it's driving me nuts. Love your broadcasts, outfits and fruitiness." Thank you, Norma, my dear, thank you. And you were spot on. You were spot on, my dear. Yes, it was the Williamson. And wasn't it scintillating? Wasn't it absolutely gorgeous? This was at the Buckingham Palace Garden Party, which was the first to celebrate the creative industries, and Kingdomers will all recognise many of the well-known faces that were assembled there from the crowd of 4,000. There were guests from the world of culture, art, heritage, film, television, radio and fashion, Some of the notables there were Kate Moss, although I couldn't find a photograph of her, she was hiding, Tracy Emin, Rosie Huntington-Whiteley, and Edward Enninful, who Meghan likes to think of her bestie, who just can't get enough of the king, can he? Every week, Kate Moss and Edward Enninful lining up to meet the king at one of his galas, even if he's not there. And, it must drive the other son and the other daughter-in-law absolutely crazy. Ha ha! The Duke of Edinburgh worked the crowds and was utterly charming as usual, as was the Duchess of Gloucester, who was serene and chic. Queen Camilla wore Anna Valentine and a hat by Philip Tracy and Chanel cap-toe pumps, and I believe that it is the first public appearance on Queen Camilla of this brooch that Norma mentioned, the Williamson pink diamond, that was fashioned into its current form in 1953. The central stone is considered one of the finest pink diamonds ever discovered, and it was presented as a wedding gift uncut to the late Queen Liz in 1947 by the Canadian geologist and royalist Dr. John Thorburn Williamson, and the late Queen had the stone cut and set into this jonquil brooch in 1953, and the Williamson mine that provided its provenance was in Tanzania. The brooch featured the addition of 203 white diamonds, most of them brilliants, but also a few baguettes and marquises, and the king looked dapper in a matching pale pink waistcoat. I thought they looked adorable together at this gathering. And by the way, that brooch would go for about 30 million perhaps these days. I mean, it's priceless really because it's royalty, but when people are trying to attach some sort of price to it, the estimate is round about 30 million. A lovely little sparkler. Now, let's get on to this criticism that I've received. And as I said, I would prefer to keep an atmosphere of civility because it was put to me in a civil style. It was courteously expressed. Zara is the name of this viewer who said, River, this is from a place of love, as I have enjoyed your channel, but I was absolutely sick to my stomach listening to your coverage of Nigeria. I am also a black Jamaican Canadian who discovered I am 70% Nigerian. You may not understand the pain and struggles of the descendants of slavery. We see a woman of colour doing 100% the same thing as a white woman, and she is being rejected, denigrated, and hated. She can do no right. White is always right, I guess. Anyways, I stand with my sister of colour because she is me. We will not bow our heads as people. Well, Zara, thank you for your comment and thank you for adding an alternative point of view, politely expressed. It is welcome here, and it gives me something to consider. And I have tried over the last few hours to deeply consider whether or not I strayed from what I feel is morally acceptable, or at least what is considered decent. And I do consider myself considerably self-aware enough to be able to self-evaluate and reflect on that level, but I've got to tell you that I truly can't think of anything I said that makes me think that you deserve some sort of apology or that warrants some kind of retraction. Firstly, you have assumed my racial mix. As I've told you, I've never divulged whether or not I am 100% white Caucasian. But your comment seems to assume that I am. I've not divulged that information, so let's start there. But that aside, you say that listening to my coverage of Nigeria made you sick. What was it that actually made you sick? Yes, I criticised the entire affair. In a comedic way, I would say. It was rather lighthearted. But something about it made you sick. It must have been the overall sense of criticism towards Meghan, because you specify her rather than Harry. Although the mockery that I offered and the incredulity at the whole situation was actually aimed at both of them, a white man and a biracial woman. And Harry came in for it just as much as Meghan. And I was criticising them for what I perceived to be their delusions of grandeur and their posturing and their pomposity and the absolute audaciousness of carrying out a royal tour in everything but name when they are no longer working royals? Who else does that? Who else does that? What other philanthropist or charity representative in that sort of manner? Are you able to tell me one? Now, you talk of pain and struggles. You say that I may not understand the pain and struggles of the descendants of slavery. Well, we all have pain and we all have struggles, dear, with all due respect. And I know, it's not the same. It's not the same as the black experience and the descendants of black slaves. I get it. I know that's what we're told. But in my opinion, black pain is no greater than white pain, pink pain, brown pain, or any other colour. It has a different quality, of that I know, and that I have heard about and read about, and because I have a curiosity in the world. And I grew up like most people in the kingdom, with friends and family and loved ones and lovers of all colours, including black. So I understand that that particular pain has its own unique quality, as does my own pain and my own history and my own struggles, that you might not be privy to or know about, and that most people watching are privy to in their own worlds and know about. I can empathise with your pain, but I haven't walked a mile in your shoes, Zara, my dear, admittedly. But you haven't walked a mile in mine either. And when you say that we see a woman of colour doing 100% the same thing as a white woman, and she's being rejected, denigrated and hated, can I also bring to your attention the Princess of Wales? And you might yawn, and you might roll your eyes at that, and yawn, but the fact of the matter is that Catherine was also, when she went to Jamaica, and you say you're Canadian Jamaican, with 70% Nigerian, when she went to Jamaica, she was denigrated and hated on. And actually it was far worse in the press for them when this happened, if you recall. The headlines regarding the Harkles, there was a little bit of sarcasm, I thought, in the optimism, in a very British way in some of our headlines, lots of sarcasm, but it was mainly optimistic and cheerful, and rather lots of goodwill, very little disparagement, if any at all, in the main headlines. Catherine got it, as did William. They got it bad, and they were humiliated and rejected, as you say, and all the same sort of things. She could do no right, and they could do no right. This white couple, they were ripped to shreds, Zara. Ripped to shreds. And actually, it was largely due to the chaos that had been sowed by Meghan and Harry when they hijacked and weaponised the zeitgeist of the BLM movement and rode on its coattails, sailing into Oprah Winfrey and everything that came after that. They weaponised that moment, and that is when it became fashionable and de rigueur to try and pull down those such as the Prince and Princess of Wales, who were seen as white imperialists with their unconscious bias and their racism, although of course 2 or 3 years later that was denied by Harry. Oh, we never called them racist. What are you all talking about? Where have you got that from? I wonder. You say that I may not understand the pain and struggles of the descendants of slavery. Well, if that's true, I can assure you that Rachel Ragland, or Adam Azee, or whatever she's going by these days, Princess Meghan, I can assure you that she doesn't understand the pain or struggles of descendants of slavery any more than me. No, I'm just going to say it. She doesn't. She hasn't got a single clue. She can read a few books like I can, but just because she is a stated biracial, it doesn't mean that she understands the pain or struggles any more than me. She doesn't understand the pain and struggles any more than I understand the pain and struggles of those who are working in a Victorian workhouse, who might have been ancestors of mine. Under Victoria's rule, they might have been working in some Dickensian workhouse, or scraping together a living in the slums of London. And how far exactly do you want to go back? Do you want to go back just a few decades or a few hundred years, or back to the era before the British Empire, when other empires were in control, and when my ancestors might have been slaves for other regimes and other empires? You say you're always going to stand with your sister of colour because she is me, we will not bow our heads as people. Well, with all due respects, my dear, I think that's nonsense on stilts. Nonsense on stilts. And if that's where your imagination takes you, that's fine. I'm a great advocate of using your imagination for the sisterhood. But stand with Meghan if you feel that you have some sort of kinship with her. But I find all of this sister of colour, because she is me, a barrow of bollocks. A barrow of bollocks. It is a wheelbarrow full of bollocks that you are presenting me with. It's bullshit. It might feel comforting, and it might feel as if you are talking about your sisterhood, your brethren, standing all together, but it's bullshit. And my friendships, the sisters in my life that I consider sisters, are sisters regardless of their colour and their heritage and their experience. From the palest ivory to the deepest ebony, they are my sisters. And they don't get a free pass or favourhood if they happen to be my shade, to be my precise shade and my precise mix and my colour of palest apricots and cream with rose petals. I respect your view, Zara dear, and I'm sure you're a nice lady, and I'm sure that you will respect my right to reply here, but I will make the point that although that is the way you feel, and I accept it, ladies and gentlemen of every colour have commented in my comment section, sharing the same point of view as me, and on the internet and beyond, YouTube channels from black ladies, Nigerian ladies, commentators, as I've said before, they've all come forward, and there's been dozens of them, by the way, sharing the same viewpoint as me. So am I supposed to stay silent just because, as a perceived white person, I would appear arrogant and as if I feel that white is right just because I am expressing my view, which is the same as theirs? But other commentators are allowed to share exactly the same point as me and exactly the same criticisms of Meghan, simply because they descended from black slavery. How is that fair? How is that right? How is that just? I'm afraid to say, my dear, that that sort of reaction is what is polarising people enough to send them into extremism, and by extremism, in this case, right-wing extremism. It exists most definitely on both ends of the lollipop. But right-wing extremism exists because voices are oppressed and silenced using tactics not too dissimilar to this, that makes out that we are discompassionate because of our white privilege and our unconscious bias and our bigotry, when I simply reject this. I reject it out of hand. And I might be told that I have no right to reject it myself as somebody who is perceived white. Well, I say bollocks to that. I can reject whatever I like. I do not accept it. I will not be coerced into admitting that I hold bigotry or racism of any kind. I know that I don't. But, Zara dear, you began your comment saying that this is from a place of love, which always tells me that something's coming, that something's coming later in the comment. Love you, River, but that's the kind of comment that most of us dread receiving, and we'll usually click away and think, not going to bother reading it. Passive aggression, the worst. But I did read your comment, and I get the impression that you are a very nice lady, and so I return the love that you offer me. I return it, yes, I do speak a little fruitily, as I find, but you know that is just me, my dear. I mean no offence, you remain very welcome here, but that is my response, and I hope that you will accept it even if you don't agree with it. There were a couple of private audiences held today at Buckingham Palace, and the King welcomed the Ambassador of Burkina Faso and also the Ambassador of Uzbekistan. And don't they all look glorious? As did the Duchess of Edinburgh, because our Sophie was out and about in Manchester in these natty trousers by Roland Moray, and she wore white leather accessories with them at the Seashell Trust in Cheadle, Greater Manchester, which supports children and young adults with complex learning difficulties, disabilities and additional communication needs from all over the kingdom. She had a go at adaptive tricycling and took a spade in hand to turn the earth at a new construction site. She took a music class, and as always she proved herself an instant hit with young and old alike, fruits of all seasons, delighting in her charismatic and easy style. Sunshine in a bottle, she is, that gal. She was presented with an ornamental bouquet, haven't seen one of those before, and the Prince of Wales, as patron of the appeal to create the Fleming Initiative at St Mary's Hospital, Paddington, attended an event of the Royal Society in London to celebrate global efforts to tackle antimicrobial resistance and build stronger health systems, food security and climate resilience. At Carlton House Terrace, His Royal Highness attracted a mix of representatives from United Nations organisations, ministers from the Commonwealth and beyond, and those who are championing the finding of solutions to antimicrobial resistance. This was followed by a private reception at St James's Palace. Now, when microorganisms become resistant to antibiotics and antifungals, it is then that antimicrobial resistance occurs, and it's on the rise due to the misuse of antibiotics in humans and in livestock. And if a solution isn't found, then drug-resistant microbes are going to be leading to an estimated 10 million deaths a year by 2050. And the Fleming Centre, which will research all of this issue, is set to open in 2028. And this is another example of the Prince of Wales and his forward thinking, ahead of the curve and anticipating disaster. So it's reassuring and quite encouraging to know that Prince William is on the case. Thanks for your company, my dears, and I look forward to seeing you in the next show. Ta-ta for now, and toodle pip.